Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and this is another Conversations with Marty Ross MD tonight. It's a webinar where we're going to discuss Lyme disease. Every week is a bit different because you create this webinar with your questions. So I just want to explain something here tonight. I had shoulder surgery, so you see this thing over my neck. That's actually a brace that's holding up my right arm for me. So I'm going to be having to operate with my left hand. So I may be moving a little bit more slowly, showing you things tonight than typical. But the surgery went well. I had a bunch of bone spurs that needed to be removed, and biceps tendon needed to be reattached. And I'm actually holding up well. But for the next month, you're going to see me at our webinars wearing this brace. You'll notice it on my neck. So that's what's going on here. Anyhow, for those of you that are new here, welcome. And I see a number of new names on my board. The way that you participate, new people as well as people returning, is there's a couple of ways. Number one, you could write a question to me. And the way you do that is at the bottom of the screen on the right-hand side is a chat box. You can write your question to me there. This format works best for shorter questions. So I ask that you do keep it shorter. If it gets too long, I'm just not going to be able to respond to it. Okay, so just keep that in mind. The other thing is you're writing your question. I ask that you try to write it as one big run-on paragraph, and don't use your enter key to try to create separate paragraphs, because when you do use your enter key, it sends a whole question to me. And if you try doing that multiple times in a question, I'm going to have a hard time following the different pieces from my side here. Okay. I'm glad to see there are a lot of returning people here, as we usually do have. And so people seem to be getting value out of it. And I hope you new people will get value out of these webinars as well, too. I am creating a recording of tonight's webinar. And if everything does go as planned, keep our fingers crossed there, I should be able to get that edited up tonight. It's a brief edit I have to do, and create a summary of it and get that sent out to you via email tomorrow morning, somewhere around 9 to 9:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. Okay, so keep your eyes out in your mail for that. Also, in that email will be a chance to sign up for the next webinar, which will be in 2 weeks. I'm taking a week off because I will be at the annual ILADS meeting in Boston next week, and so I'm going to take a break from doing webinars so I can learn some more interesting things. All right. All right. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started here. So if you're in the live version of the webinar, you're going to be able to see the questions because I'll post them to your screen. They don't show up in the recorded version, so I'm going to read them out as well too. Okay. Hello, Shauna. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. I have insomnia, both getting to sleep and staying asleep. L-theanine makes me really hyper, so I can't take anything with that ingredient. Do you know of good supplements for sleep that don't include L-theanine? Also, which prescription sleep meds do you like? I'm nervous about dementia side effects. Okay, so let me, so anything, any prescription medicine, any supplement you take, sometimes will have what I call paradoxical reactions that will cause the opposite thing of what they're supposed to do. And that seems to be what's happening with you here with the herb L-theanine. Okay, so let's take a look. I'm going to have an idea what might work, but I need to look at the actual ingredients in it. So I'm going to do a screen share here. Oops, I'm going to try to do a screen share here. There we go. All right, so this is my supplement store, Marty Ross MD supplements. And then there is a section here that I have called sleep. And the product, there's a couple products that you might look at. Let's look at this first one. It's called Sleep Formula. And this is a compound, and I'm trying to see what's in the compound. So just bear with me here a minute. Actually, let's go up here. I think I'll make it so you can see it better. There we go. So it's got valerian, lemon balm, hops, and passion flower. So this is an idea for you. Okay. And this is, it looks like, so the valerian at 300 milligrams a capsule is actually a pretty good dose just that way. So probably one, at most 2 pills at bedtime, and see if this will work for you. I want to let you know, rarely people also will have a reaction to the Borrelia, and it will make them a little bit more jittery too, but you can't tell. Just because that happened with you in the L-theanine does not mean it's going to happen here with this valerian in here, okay? So this is a good product. I've had good success with people getting sleep with this one. The other one I want to show you is Research Nutritionals in the last, I think about 6 months now, has developed this and released this new product called Circadian PM. And let's see what's in this one. Okay, so this has got glycine, valerian, curcumin, magnolia, 5-HTP, L-theanine. Okay, so this one you wouldn't be able to use. So take a look at, again, look at that sleep formula from Karuna. Okay, that's an idea for you. All right, and then in terms of other ideas for sleep, let me get out of here. All right, there we go. It's taking me, I have to hop around between these screens, and I'm used to doing my right hand with it, so it's taking me a little longer tonight. You may be noticing that. All right. Anyhow, so I know you've read some of my material because the way you describe your sleep problems. So I try to describe sleep problems as problems of either falling asleep or staying asleep or both. Okay. All right. And so when we look at herbal medicines, they're tending to probably be better at getting you out. Their effect is not going to be as long acting as some of the prescription medicines, right? So I would tend to put the herbals in more of a get you out category. Other prescription medicines that are in that get you out period tend to be prescription medicines that have a very short acting period of time. Okay. And so the medicine I really like for that is Ambien. Ambien binds to a receptor in your brain called a benzodiazepine GABA receptor, and it has a short acting effect. It should be moving out of your system in about 4 hours. If it works for you and then you start to wake up at about 3 or 4 hours, there's a couple things you can do there. You can either take another half pill of it, or there is something called Ambien there's a long-acting variety of Ambien that has two parts to the pill, one that gets released immediately and another release that happens about 4 hours later. So it has that same effect of taking it twice, all right? Ambien is a non-addicting sleep medicine, and I've tended to have no problem with people using that one. Now, even though I classify sleep as being a problem with getting out or staying out, often, if you can start by working on medicines that get you out, it will knock you into a deep enough sleep that you're going to stay there. Okay. All right. If that does not work for you, another alternative would be to use your herbal medicine to help get you out. And in addition, use a prescription medicine called trazodone. Now, trazodone is a medicine that was designed as an antidepressant medicine. It too has no addiction qualities to it at all. And it tends to take a little bit longer to get you asleep, but it has a pretty good job of keeping you asleep. So sometimes people can do that combination, okay? Now, you made mention of being concerned that some sleep medicines might leave you with dementia, all right? So some of the medicines we use for sleep include a gabapentin, which is an anti-seizure medicine. And gabapentin, sometimes sustained using it may lead to dementia. So I think that is what you were referring to, okay? All right. There are a number of articles I have written about sleep that you might want to take a look at. I'll show you those here in a minute. One focuses on the behavioral, environmental things that you can do that will help with sleep. Another one focuses on herbal options. And then finally, there's an article on prescription options as well, too. All right. So I hope that gives you some things to look at using there. Let me just do another screen share here. All right. So in terms of my information on sleep, take a look at Treat Lyme by Marty Ross MD. You can look in my online Lyme guide here, and there is a section I have on sleep. All right. And so this one called The Basic Steps talks about things you can do with your environment, turning off all your blue lights, don't work in bed, that kind of thing. Okay. Then a review natural medicines, and then finally here's a whole article on prescription medicines. Okay. Now, if you notice over here, there's an article on medical marijuana, cannabis, and CBD. So in terms of medical marijuana, some people do try to use CBD, which is a component of medical marijuana. The other major component of medical marijuana is THC. All right. So THC is what gives you the high, basically. But THC versus CBD, if you've tried CBD and it doesn't get you to sleep, there is a good chance the THC might. It's better at getting a person to sleep than the CBD is. Okay. But you can read more information about that here too. All right. All right. Good. Thanks for the question. Good luck to you. Hello, Doug. I see. Hi, Dr. Ross. I have mold toxicity, Lyme, Bartonella, small fiber neuropathy, and motor sensory demyelination. My legs get red when I stand, and my feet get deep red when exposed to warm water. Do you have any ideas to what causes the redness and if there are remedies? Also, have you had patients try adaptogens other than ashwagandha? I have bad side effects from ashwagandha twice. I also tried rhodiola rosea and adrenal cortex, which is not an adaptogen, neither of which make me feel calmer or reduced fatigue. Also, in your book, you indicate that nystatin helps with resistance to fluconazole. Can you explain that? Thank you. All right. So it's a number of questions there. So let's start with the last one. So as many of you know, one of the recommendations that I make when a person has yeast overgrowth in their intestines, too many yeast living in the intestines, I recommend treating it with two things, or one of the options I have involves two things. And so that involves using the prescription medicine nystatin coupled with the prescription medicine diflucan, also known as fluconazole. Now, of those two medications, the bazooka, the stronger medicine, is actually the fluconazole. But what I have found in my practice is that yeast have an easier chance of developing resistance to fluconazole unless I include the nystatin in that treatment. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. There isn't any science on that. There's been more of my observation, and I think it's an observation of many of us that try to treat chronic intestinal yeast infections. Okay, so that's what that comment means. And then in terms of the redness of your legs, it is likely due to nerve dysregulation of your blood vessels. And so your nerves, your small nerves that are injured in your situation here, one of their responsibilities is making it so that your blood vessels stay constricted. If they're not constricting those small blood vessels enough, that's going to allow more blood to rush into those blood vessels, giving the redness. Okay. I don't have a good idea what to do for that, unfortunately. I mean, one of the things I think you and I have talked about in previous webinars is some ways to start repairing your nerves. So you might want to look, those things should help over time or have a chance of helping you over time. And I know we've talked about doing nerve repair with the peptide called BPC-157. That peptide has the ability to repair tissues throughout the body, including nerves. And that would be one pill twice a day. I know we also talked about doing some support for the nerve cell membrane as well as the mitochondria by using something called phospholipid repair. Phospholipids are the fats that make up the covering of your cell energy factories called mitochondria and also make up your nerve cell membrane. And so you can repair those by taking a product that has those phospholipid fats in it. And the product I like for that is a product made by Research Nutritionals called ATP 360. That's 3 pills, 1 time a day. And in addition, I would couple that with some glutathione. Glutathione is a very strong antioxidant that gets inside of injured nerves and injured mitochondria and can start repairing from the inside. And the product I like for that is a product by Research Nutritionals called Trifortify. And you would do a teaspoon once or twice a day. Okay, so keep dealing with the insults that are insulting your nerves, the infections and the toxins. And in addition, do repair work, BPC-157. as well as the ATP 360 and the Trifortify, the glutathione product. Okay. And I think we talked about that maybe 1 or 2 webinars ago. All right. And then in terms of adaptogen, so adaptogen is an herb that's going to help you deal better under stress. And ones like ashwagandha have been shown in animal studies to help your adrenal glands and your thyroid gland work better. Okay. Alternatives to ashwagandha, if you can't tolerate, one is rhodiola, but obviously that's giving you some problems here too. Also, ginseng, Siberian ginseng or Panax ginseng, either one of those sometimes can be useful adaptogens. And then finally, cordyceps, a mushroom called cordyceps, sometimes can be an adaptogen too. All right. Now, if you cannot tolerate adaptogens, then the next step is to just do some small replacement for what the adrenals should be making. And one way to do that is with the adrenal cortex, which is a supplement. It's got some ground up adrenal gland in it. But if that's not working or you're not tolerating it, the next step would be to do a very small amount of a steroid called cortef. Now, I know steroids get to be controversial in Lyme, and you probably all have heard, don't use steroids if you have Lyme because it may suppress the immune system and make it so that the germs can grow more easily. And that's true, okay? But what I'm talking about doing is doing what's known as physiologic replacement, giving an amount that we would expect your adrenal glands to be able to make on their own. And in that way, it actually supports the immune system. It doesn't suppress the immune system, okay? So for instance, you probably could take all the way up to about, I think when I've looked at the data on this before, you could do all the way up to about 40 milligrams, even up to twice a day on cortef, and it still would be considered to be in physiologic range. But where I start people when I started is to start at 5 milligrams in the morning and 5 milligrams between 1 and 2. And that requires a prescription. Okay. All right. And then let's see here. I think I just answered the major questions there. I'm going to do a quick screen share here again. All right. So, okay. So in terms of doing things that help with nerve repair, take a look at my, let's see here. Where is it? Oh, brain and nerves. Look at my brain and nerve section, okay? And then take a look at this peripheral neuropathy evaluation and repair in Lyme disease, all right? And in here, I talk about some basic blood test evaluations you should do. I also talk about what you can start doing to repair the nerve damage, okay? So I talk about the BPC 157 peptide in here. I talk also about repairing the nerve cell and mitochondria membrane damage. And I give you some of the suggested products that we just talked about. Okay, so you can take a look at this here. All right. I think that pretty much is what I wanted to show you there. All right, let's go back. All right, Doug, good luck to you. Hello, Deb. Let's see. For each Bart, Borellia, and Babesia, what is the life cycle and how long? Replication lifespan. Okay, so my understanding is that Bartonella and Babesia have a replication cycle of about 24 hours. All right, so they can come back pretty quickly. Lyme, I have seen data that suggests it can be anywhere from a week up to a month. And therefore, Lyme is a lot slower growing. And therefore, if you are treating it, it's going to take longer to recover from. But also, if you stop treating it because it takes a lot longer to replicate, it can sometimes take even up to 2 months before you start getting symptomatic again. All right. Versus Babesia and Bartonella, if you're on something that's working and you stop it, often within about 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to start having a major return of symptoms from the amount of germs that have replicated, increasing the germ load. Okay. All right. Thanks for the question. Hello, Scott. Let's see. Hold on here a minute. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. I'm having terrible continuous muscle pains in my legs and feet for 2 years that started after my COVID vaccine. I have no brain fog or fatigue. I've had intermittent abdominal pain and bladder sensitivity for 19 years with no conclusive diagnosis. I had tick bite infections with round rash in 2018 and was given only 7 days of antibiotics at the time. I tested positive Armin Labs IgG Borrelia and rickettsia in 2022, but negative for Babesia and Bartonella. I tried antibiotic treatment, 6 weeks penicillin, later 4 weeks doxycycline, later 6 weeks IV Rocephin metronidazole with no improvements. I repeated Lyme testing this summer at IGenex, not positive for the PCR test they do for Borrelia. It's an enhanced PCR test they do for Borrelia. Negative Immunoblot Borrelia, positive Immunoblot Bartonella. 6 weeks ago, I started the following herbal protocol: 6,000 milligrams of Sidacuta, or 6,000 milligrams per day Sidacuta, 1,000 milligrams a day for each of Hutania, black walnut, skullcap, knotweed, cryptolepis, and cat's claw. And nystatin. Let's see here. And nystatin for possible yeast. No improvements yet, with some moderate herxing. Any suggestions? When should I add antibiotics? Which ones? And or methylene blue? Thank you for your help. All right. So, so I just want to make some comments and some observations here. Okay. So in terms, so there, some people have had injuries from the COVID vaccine. We think it may be spike protein related. It's a small number of people, but some people have. Okay. So there is some nerve injury here that may be a separate issue from infections. All right. So one of the things I do suggest is to look again at the recommendations I gave just a few minutes ago about how to repair nerve damage. Okay. So look at a BPC 157, look at the glutathione, and look at using an ATP 360, for instance. Okay. So I would look at doing that in addition to trying to kill germs. All right. All right. Secondly, in terms of Armin Labs and what it's capable of finding. So Armin Labs and in the United States, a lab called Infectolab use a technique which is called an Elispot test. And what an Elispot does is it measures whether your white blood cells called T cells have ever tried to attack these infections. All right. And the way we look to see if they've tried to attack them is we take your blood, we take those white blood cells, those T white blood cells, we put them in a test tube, and then we introduce into the test tube proteins from the various germs that we want to see if your white blood cells have tried to fight before. Okay, so there's a test tube in which we put some Bartonella proteins. There's another test tube in which we put some of the Babesia proteins, for instance. All right. Okay. So, and then we look to see, do they react? All right. Now, the one thing about these Elispot tests is they rely on the fact that the T white blood cells will have seen the infection. Now, the one part that is interesting about the Elispot is your T white blood cells that fight germs only circulate for 2 months and then they die. All right. So in theory, if your Elispot is positive, that means sometime in the last 2 months, your immune system has been trying to fight those infections, or that they're still in you. All right. Now, you could still have germs in you and the Elispot may not pick it up because it's possible your germs suppress the immune system and make it so that the T cells are not as reactive or can't fight the infection. Okay. Also, germs can hide away in various places the immune system can't see it in your body, and therefore the Elispot wouldn't be positive. Okay, so just keep that in mind. All right, finally, the Elispot through Armin is only able to detect 3 strains of Borrelia, and we think there may be 8 strains that can affect people. Okay. For Bartonella, they're only able to detect 1 strain of Bartonella, and we think there may be 15 strains that can infect people. And for Babesia, I believe they're able to detect just Babesia microti. And again, we think there may be even up to 15 or 20 strains, okay? And that's the same case with Infectolab. Infectolab, the difference between Armin and Infectolab is Armin will at least look for 3 strains of Borrelia. Infectolab only looks for 1. All right. So I'm not that enamored with doing Elispot testing through those labs because they're not picking up enough of the strains that actually infect people. All right. So the fact you had some negative testing out of Armin doesn't really tell me anything, I guess, is where I'm going. Okay. Now, you have had some gold standard testing, though. The PCR culture test that you had done from IGenex, when it grows positive, it means you really got the germ in you. Okay. Now, in terms of it being a sensitive test, a test that can always find Borrelia in you may not be that good. But when it does come back positive, it definitely means you got Borrelia in you. All right. And then in terms of your other tests, let's see. Bear with me here. I got to repost that here. Okay, so you had the culture enhanced PCR for Borrelia, and that was positive. That means something. Okay. The negative Immunoblot. So an Immunoblot is measuring, are you making antibodies? All right. And if there's enough immune suppression going on, an Immunoblot could be negative. All right. And then, and it looks like you had a positive Immunoblot for Bartonella. Okay. So that means you probably got some Bartonella contributing to a lot of your symptoms here as well. All right. Now keep in mind, Bartonella can give a lot of bladder irritation, sometimes abdominal pain. All right. So that catches my attention. So just to be aware of that. In terms of an herbal protocol, you're on the herbal protocol, you're on this Siddha acuta, the Hutania, a black walnut, Chinese skullcap, Japanese knotweed, and cryptolepis, and cat's claw. Basically, through all those herbs, you've covered both growing and persister Bartonella. So Bartonella can be in a growing phase, and we think a small percentage go into hibernation. This protocol would take care of that. In addition, this protocol is good for Lyme. You've got, between the various herbs that you're using, you've covered all the germs, all right? So my preference these days in my practice is to usually try to start with herbal antibiotics first. They have a chance of helping a person for Bartonella, they work about 70 to 75% of the time. For Babesia, they tend to work about 80 to 85% of the time. Not quite as high as the chances that a prescription antibiotics work, but pretty close. Okay, so my experience is for Bartonella, prescription antibiotic regimens have a chance of helping. Any 2 that you put somebody on have a chance of helping about 80 to 85% of the time. And I said the herbs work 70 to 75% of the time. And then for Babesia, the herbs for Borrelia, the herbs can work about 85 to 90% of the time, actually. And for the prescriptions work the same rate. Okay. So generally the reason I like to go with herbals first is it's a way of sparing your gut microbiome. And, we're just really scratching the surface on the importance of that bacteria in your gut. Now, granted, sometimes we got to use prescription antibiotics that may harm those good bacteria in your gut, but I try to prevent going there unless we need to. All right. So how long do I usually work with an all herbal regimen before I think we need to go to the prescriptions? I usually look at for Bartonella, if your herbal regimen is working, within 2 to 3 months, you should start seeing a decrease in Bartonella symptoms, okay? For Borrelia, it gets a little more complicated. It can sometimes take 6 to 9 months before you start seeing improvements, even with prescriptions, all right? So, but at a minimum, you should start seeing some improvements on your Bartonella symptoms, therefore some improvements in how you're doing overall within 2 to 3 months. And if you're not, then you may want to consider switching over to prescription type regimen. Okay. All right. All right. I know I answered a lot of things or explained a lot of things, but a little long-winded response, but I hope that gives you something to work with there. Okay. Good luck to you, Scott. Thanks for the question. Christine says, glad to hear your surgery went well. Thank you. I appreciate that, Christine. Hello, Colin. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Marty Ross. Need help with I think that means interstitial cystitis and POTS symptoms. POTS is a postural orthostatic tachycardic syndrome. I'll say more about that here in a minute. I tested positive for tick-borne relapsing fever, mycoplasma, and mold. Started 2 weeks of doxy, and it made my bladder way, way worse. Where would you suggest to start? All right. So let me make a comment. Okay, so I don't know which lab you used that gave you these test results. All right, so I can't comment about whether it was valid testing or not. All right. So for various reasons, I still think that the best lab to find out if you have infections is the Immunoblot testing method from IGenex, and they're the only one doing it, okay? So IGenex, this Immunoblot that IGenex uses is measuring whether you have made antibodies. And for Lyme, they look to see if you're making antibodies against 8 strains. For Bartonella, they look to see if you're making them against 15 strains that make up the family of Bartonella. And in addition, for Babesia, they look to see if you make antibodies against the family of Babesia, and therefore they can detect any one of maybe 15 strains that can give you Babesia symptoms. Okay. In terms of chronic Mycoplasma, so Mycoplasma, I'm skeptical about. I know that's different than where some of my colleagues are, but let me explain why. So Mycoplasma pneumoniae is a common bacteria that is found in healthy people. All right. So just like we have bacteria that live in our skin, all right, we have some bacteria that ride along inside of us. They cohabitate with us, and they don't cause us problems. So Mycoplasma pneumoniae can be one of those bacteria. And I'm going to be off on my numbers here a little bit, but there have been studies done looking at healthy people and trying to determine what percent of those healthy people have positive testing for Mycoplasma pneumoniae. Okay, these are healthy people. And I think it's like 10 to 20% of healthy people. I mean, there's a lot of Mycoplasma pneumoniae out there. So just finding it in you does not mean it's causing a problem. Could, but the greater chances it's just something riding along, all right? All right. Tick-borne relapsing fever, we're starting to think may give chronic health problems the way that Lyme disease does, but the science on that still is a little bit new. So given the kind of symptoms you're having, I want to make sure you've had the best testing to figure this out, all right? Because I wonder if there may be some Borrelia in there, and I also wonder about Bartonella. And here's why I wonder about Bartonella. So interstitial cystitis often is caused by Bartonella. Sometimes Lyme, but more often than not, Bartonella, right? So everyone, interstitial cystitis is an inflammation of the lining of the bladder. And it gives you symptoms that look a lot like bladder infection, for instance. So people can have a lot of urge to pee. They'll have frequent urination. They may have burning on urination. They may get a pelvic pain. So very similar to what the symptoms are of bladder infection. And it's because the Bartonella can inflame the lining of the wall. Okay, so one thing that you could use that would be helpful for the interstitial cystitis is to take a supplement that has both glucosamine sulfate in it and quercetin. All right. Now you can either buy those as individual supplements, glucosamine sulfate is a supplement, and quercetin is a supplement, or there is a product made by a company called Vitanica that has both of them in one product. I'll show that to you here in a minute. So what happens is the quercetin or actually the glucosamine sulfate, which many of you may know of glucosamine as being something useful to rebuild cartilage in your knees and your shoulders and all that. All right. And it can work pretty well for those situations. But the other thing that happens is in the bladder, it actually provides a microscopic gelatinous coating that covers the lining of your bladder. All right. So it keeps that irritated, inflamed lining of your bladder from being further irritated by urine in there, basically. All right. The quercetin, that is useful because it is an anti-inflammatory that acts within the wall of the bladder to calm a lot of that inflammation down too. And then obviously you would want to treat for Bartonella and Lyme if you have those. All right. So the way you can dose these supplements to help with the bladder irritation, pain, discomfort, urge is glucosamine sulfate would be 500 milligrams 3 times a day. And the quercetin I like using is 500 milligrams 3 times a day. Thorne makes a product called quercetin phytosome. They're 250 milligram pills, but you do 2 pills 3 times a day. Okay. The Vitanica product is something called Bladder Ease. And it has both quercetin, glucosamine, and L-arginine in it. And you dose that at 4 pills 3 times a day. All right. And you can do your own cost comparison. I'll show you those both here in a minute. Okay. All right. And then let's see here. So your bladder may have gotten worse because of killing the germs, maybe leading initially to more inflammation, or we call that a Herxheimer reaction. All right. So the way to, and Herxheimer reactions are caused by your white blood cells manufacturing and releasing more inflammation chemicals called cytokines. All right. Now, many of you know about cytokines. I probably talk about it each one of these webinars, but just quickly, when your white blood cells see a toxin, a yeast, a bacteria, they release these things called cytokines. And on the one hand, they're good. Cytokines help turn your immune system on, bring more white blood cells to where the infection or the toxin is, and they help those white blood cells work better. All right. But for certain conditions like mold toxicity and Borrelia and chronic yeast infections in your intestines, the immune system doesn't do a good job, but it keeps trying harder and harder. And eventually it makes too many cytokines. And too many cytokines give you a ton of symptoms. They can make it so you can't think. They can disturb your sleep. They can make you hurt all over. They can give you more bladder pain. They can give you neurologic symptoms. They can cause dysfunction of your hormonal systems. So basically what we call Lyme disease symptoms are really excess cytokine symptoms. Now, when you start killing germs, that triggers the immune system to manufacture even more cytokines. So often you'll get a worsening of your already underlying symptoms, basically. And that may be what had happened here. So that quercetin that I was telling you about is useful at interfering with the production of cytokines. All right. So either within the Bladder Ease product or getting it as a separate supplement. All right. Secondly, if your reaction is pretty strong, and it sounds like it is, you might also want to work with glutathione to help control this Herxheimer, this increased cytokine reaction. All right. And what glutathione does is it's a very strong antioxidant that works on the outside of your white blood cells to decrease oxidizing agents that are triggering them to manufacture the cytokines inside the white blood cells. So I think a quercetin is blocking the factory inside the factory, okay, messing up the production line, all right? And think of glutathione as standing outside, swatting away the messages that keep telling the white blood cells to manufacture these cytokines. And so again, the product I like for that is a product made by Research Nutritionals. It's called Trifortify. It is a liposomal form of glutathione. The liposomal form is very useful because it helps increase the glutathione absorption. And Research Nutritionals has some great science showing that their product, because of the way they've designed it, is well absorbed. All right. All right. So that would, and the way you would do that is a teaspoonful once a day. Again, quercetin, either for the interstitial cystitis or for helping with lowering cytokines, is 500 milligrams 3 times a day. All right. And let's see. Yeah, so those are some ideas for you to look at. I would go back and retest to make sure you don't have Bartonella or Borrelia, but I would do that with the Immunoblot method through IGenex, okay? I would not do anything about Mycoplasma. The tick-borne relapsing fever may or may not be an issue, but the same things we do for Lyme take care of tick-borne relapsing fever. And then I already talked to you about how to calm that bladder down. Okay. All right. Let me do a quick screen share here for you. All right. So take a look in terms of what to do for your bladder. Again, I've got an article on that. Look in the bladder section. And there's an article on interstitial cystitis and bladder symptoms. All right. It's basically what I just covered with you. Okay. All right. And then in terms of this Herxheimer reactions or increased cytokines, take a look at my section called Herxheimer and cytokines. All right. And both of these articles I have here are called Control Cytokines and Herxheimer die-off reactions basically are covering the same content. But you could look here and I talk about how do you limit a Herxheimer reaction from happening? Okay. All right. All right. And then in terms of products, take a look at my bladder aisle here. Okay. And again, you could do glucosamine with quercetin, or you can get this product called Bladder Ease, and it's got all of them in there together, basically. Okay. All right. Oh, one other thing. So these are what I offer here through Marty Ross MD supplements are the same products I use in my practice in Seattle, Washington. All right. So I've got a lot of history working with these products and I have found them to be effective. I also do a good job of trying to find the best brands that are likely to help you as well too. Okay. The other thing, I know supplements are expensive, but to help decrease your cost, I sell them at the lowest amount allowed by the manufacturers. I can't sell them any lower than I do because otherwise they won't let me sell them. But also then I cover your taxes. You don't have to pay taxes here. And if you order $50 or more, I cover your shipping for you as well too. All right. All right. Colin, good luck to you. And thanks for that question. Hello, LG. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Can you please explain the connection to SIFO and living in mold? Also, can the results from microbiology diagnostics nasal swab test match up with the results of the Hertz Me2 dust test? Thanks for your help. So I can't say yes or no on your question of the microbiology diagnostics nasal swab test and the various spores that you may be seeing on your Hertz Me test. Okay. I don't know. I haven't done those two together to see if they do correlate with each other or not. So I can't comment about that. In terms of SIFO, which stands for, and I want to make a distinction, there's something called SIBO, and then you've written SIFO. All right. So SIFO stands for small intestinal fungal overgrowth versus SIBO stands for small intestine bacterial overgrowth. All right. So SIFO usually means that you've developed too many yeast in your small intestines. It's more common to develop too many yeast in your large intestines, not in your small intestines, because the yeast aren't supposed to be there. Okay. In terms of could you have gotten yeast into your candida yeast into your small intestines from living in a moldy environment? Probably not from candida. Boy, that would be hard because you'd have to breathe it in. The acid on your stomach would probably destroy them. Okay. All right. Now, we do know that some people that live in moldy environments can develop, can get two problems. One is they can breathe in all these mold toxins, and in 25% of us, we're set up in a way that our immune systems will not break those mold toxins down, and so mold toxins get trapped in us, okay? And in addition, there's a small percent of those people that get mold toxins trapped in them that also, when they were in that moldy environment, may have breathed in mold spores or swallowed down mold spores that then colonize their nasal passages and colonize their intestines. And then where they colonize, they start producing their own toxins. So you start producing your own toxins, okay? Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that treat mold toxicity that think that everyone that they treat, they automatically put them on fungal killers to kill mold spores, all right? I disagree with that approach. In my practice, what I have seen is that approximately did we lose connection? If anyone can still hear me, say something. I suddenly see that everything is frozen here on my screen. Shoot. Okay, so you can still see me. Good. Thank you for letting me know. Bear with me here. I just need to see if I can get it so that I can start seeing. All right. So we did that. I'll do this. Wow. I have no idea what's happened, but you guys are still, yeah, you're hearing me, but I'm frozen. Rats. Why did my picture freeze? Bear with me here, everyone. All right. I tell you what, as long as you guys can keep hearing me, I'll keep talking. All right. I'm sorry about the frozen picture. I don't know why that's happening. There's something probably wrong with the system that I use, not my computer, but rather this webinar system that I use. Anyhow, the thing about, so there is good documentation that SIBO, that SIFO usually is caused by Candida. I have not seen any documentation that says that SIFO is caused by mold spores from your moldy environment. So I don't know, all right? Most of the literature is more about bacteria and Candida yeast, not about mold spores from your environment. So I just don't know that answer for sure or not, all right? All right. Thanks for that question. Good luck to you. All right, let's see. There's a question from Christine. Hello, Christine. Let's see. I have painful pressure in my lower back in the morning. The pain and pressure is relieved after a bowel movement. This is happening every day for the last few weeks. I've been off my Lyme and Bart herbs for the last 3 weeks. Could this be at all coming back? Thank you. Christine, I don't know. That is not a typical symptom that you would see with Bartonella or Lyme being active. I would suggest that you actually get evaluated by your primary care doctor or even your Lyme literate doctor. There might be something else going on. I'm not sure. I would need to do a physical exam and to make that determination for you. And I would also want to hear more of what the story is telling me. All right. But keep in mind that when people get symptoms in Lyme disease, it's not always Lyme disease. There could be other regular problems that happen to people that can happen to people living with Lyme as well, too. Okay? All right. All right. Let's see. All right, guys, I want to, let's see here. I think, so Mary can, all right. I'm trying to figure out how to get it so that my video feed starts working here again. Bear with me, everyone. I can't figure out how to get it working. All right, I'll probably keep going. I may not go the whole time. I have a hard time knowing whether you're actually hearing or seeing me or not, but we'll keep taking some questions a bit longer here. All right, Douglas, let's see here. What do you got? Hello, Dr. Ross. Thank you for all you do. I'm 30 years sick. Lyme, Barton, Babesia. Bart since 14, possibly 40 years ago. Why do you choose Great Plains for mycotoxins testing? 2, this is what I'm on. Is it overkill? All right, so hold on a minute. So my preferred lab for doing urine mycotoxin testing is actually real time. All right, I think it does a better job of detecting the full range than Great Plains, which is now called Mosaic Diagnostics. All right. So anyhow, that's what my experience is. All right. And I know Dr. Neil Nathan, who does a lot of treatment and writing in this mold toxicity space, he thinks you gain both Mosaic Diagnostics and real-time labs may be more effective at different toxins. So he actually likes doing both. All right. But that gets to be expensive. I found in my clinical experience that the real-time lab seems to have more correlation with what I see going on in my patients. All right. All right. And then let's see here. So this is what you're on. So you said Bart Babesia, I assume. Oh, Lyme, Barton, Babesia. Okay. So Chinese skullcap, Japanese knotweed, Hutania, cordyceps, and sweet Annie. Cat's claw teasel encrypted, treated Lyme many times. Doesn't work. Something keeping me sick. Hundreds of symptoms throughout the years, many neurosymptoms, lots of body pain, hip pain that radiates into my hips and groins. Let's see. I take the three times a day, new symptom, something on your penis, but doctor says he has changed his mind. He doesn't think it's herpes that presents this way. So open sores on the penis, black centers on the side, thighs, and buttocks. They itch. This is a new symptom recently. Also, do you think that some people have chronic Lyme disease? It's an immunologic aspect that's causing symptoms, not the bug. Other words, like post-Lyme or some sort of mycotoxin testing. Okay. So Doug, I'm not sure if you're on the right thing or not, because I would actually need to spend a lot more time interviewing you. And I mean, like a visit, like almost an hour and a half to try to ascertain what is going on, to review with you what you've tried before and what the results were, and whether I think it's a good idea to be on these things or not. So I can't say that for sure. Okay. It is true. So when people have chronic Lyme disease, it is true that some of them have chronic Lyme disease because the germ is still living in them. All right. The Infectious Disease Society of America has a theory that they think that people that have chronic symptoms, there's no way they think it's because germs still live in you, although there's good science that shows they can. But their ideas on why a person may not get better range from having damage to your immune system and ongoing immune suppression, damage to your immune system triggering autoimmune illness that perpetuates all your symptoms. Another idea they have is that having had the infections, you've got permanent injury, okay? And I think those are both valid theories. There are some people living with chronic Lyme disease that no matter how much we put in them way of antibiotics, we're not able to get them better. It's a small percent, but there is a percentage of people like that. So yes, for those people, some of it may be due to ongoing injury from having had the infections. Some of it may be due to autoimmune illness. That's another thing. There's another theory of why people don't recover, and that is due to a turning on of a part of your brain called the limbic system. The limbic system is the part of the brain that governs your fight or flight responses. and it governs whether we reproduce or not, gives us the urge to have families, all that. That area can get overly turned on, and then it leads to an overreactivity to what's happening in your environment, triggering symptoms that look like Lyme disease, for instance, okay? So there are things you can do to reprogram that area of the brain. There's something called a brain tap program. There's Annie Hopper's dynamic neural retraining system, also known as DNRS. There's something called the Gupta method. But these are other things that can explain it too. In terms of tissue injuries, there's things you can do working with peptides. And then in terms of autoimmune illness, it's worth a try of low-dose naltrexone to see if that can make a difference too, okay? I'm going to do a screen share here and show you an article I have about this. All right, so take a look in my my Lyme disease treatment guide in this tab called Key Info. And I review some theories as to why chronic Lyme treatment fails. And I give some ideas on things you can try, all right? So one of the ideas that people have persister Lyme, it just continues to live in you. Another is autoimmune disease. Another is that all the antibiotics you've used disrupt your gut microbiome. And with the disrupted microbiome, the rest of your body is not receiving signaling from the microbiome that it should to function correctly. Another is that there's retained germ debris in you that the immune system is supposed to break down. But if it can't break it down, then it triggers ongoing immune reactions. There's this limbic system brain holding of the illness that I talked about. And I give you links here to the Gupta and Annie Hopper programs. There's tissue damage. And I talk about looking at my key oral peptide strategies article to help with that too. And then there's chronic inflammation, and there's some peptide and low-dose naltrexone you can do for that. Okay. So that's my article on the theories of why treatment might not work with antibiotics in a small set of people. All right, let me try. I'm going to try to turn my camera on and off again one more time. And do one other thing here. Well, that didn't do it. There's just nothing transmitting here. Uh-oh. Oh, wait a minute. That did. Hold on a minute. Let me go back here again. Huh. Well, what's happening here? Bear with me, guys. I think I may have messed it up worse. All right, Doug, I'm going to get your question out of here. Huh. I'm afraid my whole computer just jammed. Oh, come on. Well, guys, I've lost all function here. I'm going to actually call it for tonight. I apologize for this. I'm not quite sure what's going on here. Anyhow, we got a good hour in. So I look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. Good night, everyone.